Good evening, and welcome to Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting of Thursday, July 18th, 2024. I'm calling this meeting to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Soul, please call the roll.
President Pollock.
Here.
Trustee Evans.
Here.
Trustee Koss.
Here.
Trustee Gallegos. Here. Trustee Marshazga.
Here.
Trustee Mateo.
Here.
Manager Francis.
Here.
Attorney Pickerel. Here. Also present Clerk Soul.
We have a quorum for this evening's meeting. President's report, I only have a few meetings and events coming up in the village over the course of the next few weeks. Upcoming meetings include July 22nd, Parks and Recreation has their regular meeting at the Riverside Public Library. July 24th, Planning and Zoning, that was canceled, wasn't it? Yes. No Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of July 24th was canceled. Instead, they'll be meeting on August 6th. So Planning and Zoning Commission will meet on August 6th here at the Village Hall. August 8th, Preservation Commission will have their meeting at the Village Hall. August 12th, the Ad Hoc Sesquicentennial Planning Committee will meet at the Village Hall. August 13th, Board of Fire and Police Commissioners at the Quincy Community Center, located at 43 East Quincy Street. August 13th, Landscape Advisory Commission, 27 Riverside Road here at the Village Hall. And the Village Board meeting of August 1st will be canceled. We'll meet again on August 15th. One upcoming event in the village on July 26th, a movie in the park at Big Ball Park. The movie will begin approximately at 8:30 p.m. or when it's dark enough to show the movie. The movie will be Back to the Future. Manager Francis.
I do not have a report this evening.
Thank you. Now on our agenda is time for resident comments on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for residents to address the board, bring issues to our attention that are not on the agenda. Any agenda items, you may speak directly when those are under consideration. We will not take action or discuss any items brought up, but rather we'll refer those to staff for further consideration as may be needed. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items? Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you're here for.
Hi, I'm Andrew Triba. I'm a resident of Riverside. I just wanted to speak briefly about the sale of the property at the corner of Burlington and Harlem Avenue for the purpose of, this is a village-owned property, and the proposed purchase agreement is for the purpose of relocating Starbucks to that corner property. I want to recommend against selling the property for this purpose. My understanding after listening carefully to the Planning Commission meeting discussing this was that the purpose, the zoning and planning of that property was always for pedestrian mixed-use business. And if you listen very carefully to that Planning Commission meeting and what was said, it's clear that this essentially would become a single-use property. It's not what it was intended for. Sorry, I need my glasses these days. So it goes against the planned use, but that property really needs mixed-use pedestrian use. Should be retail on the first floor, residential on the above. Something on a small scale, Amley building in Evanston, for instance, would be appropriate there. Obviously, it couldn't be that kind of scale, but businesses on the first floor and residential above. That's what I would envision was in the planned use for that property and zoned for it. Again, if you listen carefully to the Planning Commission's comments and suggestions during the meeting, if you read between the lines, it essentially becomes a single-use property for the sale of cannabis. And the side business, the Planning Commission had many questions about access. Would it even be a successful business? It's, in my mind, these questions were very valid, and I have many more questions which I will save for another time because I want to do a little more research on how we got here. The thing about a single-use business like that and that big of a lot is, which essentially I would say it is that you're not going to get a do-over once you sell the property. So you got to really think carefully about the long-term plan and purpose of that site. If you listen carefully to the comments and suggestions and questions and feedback they got from the architect, the proposal really doesn't fit into that site. It really was like, we're going to shoehorn this project into this property one way or another. We're not going to have access to traffic going on to Harlem. It's going to all flow out to Burlington, down the street, past the schools, past the school residential communities, and past where the natural flow of school children are to RB, Hauser Central, starting at 8 a.m. When I walk my kid to school, other people there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. So there are a lot of safety issues. Once you sell it, you won't get a redo. And I would, pardon the pun, but if the pot doesn't fit, don't plant it. Don't plant it there, okay? So you've heard my voice. I encourage you and I encourage the residents listening to really take a look carefully and slowly walk through the questions, comments, and feedback that the proposed purchaser had during the village planning meeting. I certainly have more questions than they asked, but they had some good starter questions, and when you look at the proposed site, the layout, how it would affect the village, how traffic would flow, it doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. No matter how you try to twist it and turn it, and then the idea that you're going to have this secondary, smaller business, a coffee shop, that the Planning Commission said, we don't think that'll be successful. Well, if you're not thinking through it, here's why it's not going to be successful. I, for one, am not going to go sit outside a cannabis shop to drink a cup of coffee next to a smoky train, next to a Harlem Avenue, and deal with some of the customer issues that they have at their current site, including public urination and other issues that have cropped up.
Thank you,
about that.
Thank you, Mr. Triba. We appreciate your comments. Just for general public's knowledge, the public hearing on this application was public hearing was started by the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 26th, continued to August 6th. So there will be opportunity for additional public comment on August 6th at the Planning and Zoning Commission. Their recommendation will then come to this village board in late August or September.
Okay. Thank you for your time, and I hope that this matter is really given some very careful consideration, especially the downstream opportunities lost. I understand it's village property. I understand there's a desire to offload it. It makes sense to not hang on to properties, but we have to be careful, not just about today, but tomorrow, what the intended use of the space is and how it's going to impact the community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments this evening on non-agenda items? Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Jim Raffensperger. I live at 462 Selborne. I would like to thank the village for picking up the storm debris over the past few days. It has been a huge benefit. I was pleasantly surprised when the bundles that I bundled up and put on my front in the parkway were picked up. It was fantastic. And I'd like to contrast that with 3 weeks before when I was taking out buckthorn and barberry and honeysuckle out of my lilacs, and I had 14 big bundles of stuff. I would like to ask the village to make that a regular service, whether it's a on-call type service or as a scheduled once a month type service. That would be huge for people like me who've got big lots, lots of bushes. I cut a lot of stuff out. A few years ago when we had that deadly winter that killed off the boxwood, I had 80 feet of boxwood that I had to pull out and bundle so that flood brothers would take it. Having the village be able to take that kind of stuff would have saved me days worth of work. So again, I thank the village for picking it up, whether it's the Forestry Service or Public Works. They did a great job. And I'd like to ask the village to take that on as a potential regularly scheduled service. I think it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Coincidentally, that's a matter that Manager Francis and I have started talking about and doing some research on. No promises. It's expensive. It's an additional service and that the taxpayers would have to cover, but something I think is worth considering. But
I would have been willing to pay for it.
In the meantime, as you noted, Flood Brothers, your regular garbage hauler, will pick up bundles every week during lawn service time, March to October approximately.
Correct.
If they're bundled into 4-foot long, 2-foot wide packages. But thank you. Anyone else? Public comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Carol Creedon. I've lived in Riverside for over 60 years. You guys are doing a great job so far. I just wanted to comment about 3 different things. I live on Lincoln Avenue and Forest, and we have a gas light that is so light that at night you can hardly find where to turn in for the street off of Forest to go on to Lincoln. And several of my friends have had a serious problem with driving at night and not seeing people that are trying to cross in front of you because it's like midnight, you can't see anything. I think that they should do something to strengthen that light or put a new one in because I think it's very dangerous. It looks like an accident ready to happen. Second concern is that I know this has probably been brought up a million times before, but the corner of Ogden and Joliet Road, where people have to make a left-hand turn into Riverside off of Ogden, and also because of the fact that the bridge is closed, so it's very hard to get around, so you have to go down that way. It can take you sometimes 4 to 6 times that the lights will change before you're able to make a left-hand turn into Riverside. And to me, I mean, I think I've been complaining about this for 60 years, and I thought, if I'm going to talk about something else, I don't understand why they don't consider putting a left-hand green turn signal there. And then the third thing is not a complaint because Dan from the Waterworks, the Waterworks Department, has been very good about letting us know about our condo and that we have so much water that is being used excessively that we're paying for. And so he said you have to make sure that everybody, their toilets, their sinks are all working properly so that we're not losing all this water. So everyone has checked. We've done the water test with coloring the water and putting, so then we had a commercial, a regular plumber come to the tune of like $200 to tell us there's nothing wrong with it. And yet when I talk to Dan or someone in the department, he says it hasn't made any change at all. So we're paying for all this water that we haven't really been using, that we don't think we've really been using. So I was wondering, is there any chance that they can check the meter to see if there's something faulty? Because it seems ridiculous that our water bill is so high for something we're not really using. Okay, so those are my 3 little comments. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I said before, we'll have staff look into those items and respond as determined appropriate. I will comment on Ogden and Joliet Road because I've been going through that intersection for 28 years, and it's very frustrating. It's within the jurisdiction of the Illinois Department of Transportation and the Village of Lyons. We have no direct influence over it. I believe, and maybe someone here knows history better than I, that some years ago the village did make inquiries to IDOT about fixing that, and we didn't get far. Do you remember that?
Yes, I was actually part of a meeting approximately 2 years ago where we did meet with representatives from the state and IDOT to show them the challenges of that intersection. They said that they would be reviewing it, the challenges, property acquisition because of the dimensions of that particular intersection, but it was something that they were going to add to review and feasibility of creating a left turn lane, but we have not heard back. And once again, that is part of Lyons and IDOT jurisdiction, so.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else, public comments, non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Clerk Soul, please read the consent agenda.
Ratify voucher list of bills July 5th, 2024. Approve voucher list of bills July 18th, 2024. Approve Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes June 20th, 2024. Review and file board and commission minutes. Foreign Fire Tax Board regular meeting January 10th, 2024. Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting April 24th, 2024. Parks and Recreation Board regular meeting May 20th, 2024. Historical Commission regular meeting May 20th, 2024. Landscape Advisory Commission regular meeting June 11th, 2024. Review and file department reports, Community Development, Finance, Public Works, June 2024. A resolution authorizing the sale or disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Riverside, and an ordinance authorizing the execution of an amendment to a property purchase and sales contract for the sale of real property located at 3320 South Harlem Avenue, Riverside, Illinois, and 363 through 369 East Burlington Street, Riverside, Illinois, to Starbuds.
Thank you. Does anyone have need to remove any of these items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
Motion is made.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Gallagher, second by Trustee Marshazga. Clerk Soul, please call the roll.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Koss?
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga?
Aye.
And Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Department, board, and commission reports. Do we have any department, board, or commission reports this evening? Seeing none. Next on the agenda is pending business, but with the consent of the trustees and at the discretion of the applicant, I'd like to move to item 10A and B, because I believe we have resident here on behalf of that, rather than make him sit through a boring meeting. Maybe we'll go straight to that. Any objections to that? If not, next item is 10A, consideration of a request for variation at 162 Northgate Road to allow 12-foot, 8-inch wide driveway. Planner Siren. Excuse me, sir. Ann will introduce it for us, and then you'll have your opportunity.
Good evening. Mr. Christopher Begbie of 162 Northgate Road has two items on tonight's agenda. One is a variation, and the other is a request for an accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Both requests are for the same issue, to allow his driveway to remain at 12 feet 8 inches wide. The village board can consider both the request for the variation and the accommodation under the ADA. On June 6, 2024, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously 7-0 that they did not recommend approval of the variation, with the caveat that the village board consider whether they find the ADA accommodation through other means specific to the owner. And I'd be happy to go into further details about the application if you'd like.
Thank you. Any questions of Planner Siren? If not, I'd ask Attorney Pickrell to give some background on this issue because it is rather unique. We have both a zoning request and a request for ADA accommodation.
Thank you. Yeah, this ADA, I'll start with the variation. A variation is something that is somewhat familiar to the board. If there's a mechanism that allows the relaxation of certain zoning standards, if these seven conditions are met, the first and most important one is whether or not there's a hardship imposed. Generally speaking, a hardship is a condition that's physical to the property, but Illinois courts have recognized that when the applicant is disabled, one may consider both the conditions on the property and the disability of the applicant. And so that is the first item that's being asked. You're being asked to consider. As Planner Simon mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Commission only considered the actual text, the conditions on the property. Your review is permitted to be much wider. Similarly, so that's a zoning request. Part of the reason that accommodation is made is because there's federal laws. The Americans with Disability Act and the Federal Housing Act both require that where rules, when somebody is disabled and they require accommodation, that municipalities are flexible in their application of rules to make a reasonable accommodation to that person's disability. And so there's a bit of overlap between these two. They both ask some of the same questions. You know, is there a disability? What is its nature? And how does this accommodation relate to that disability? Does it address it? And so it is up to the board. I mean, they both offer similar relief too. The relief is that the driveway can be 2 feet roughly wider than it was before. So it's up to the board which it would like to do. It has the authority to grant, if you grant the variation, that moots the ADA request, and if you grant the ADA request, that largely addresses what is being requested in the variation. So, and it's a little bit different than what we normally do. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer it.
If I may, I'd like to just comment briefly. I believe that after having conversations with Attorney Pickrell before this meeting, the courts, as I understand, the courts allow us to consider the disability as part of the zoning.
Correct.
But we can also have, if we prefer, consider it separately as an ADA accommodation.
Correct.
So my recommendation would be to consider them separately and consider the zoning in the traditional manner that we consider zoning, and treat the ADA accommodation separately. That's what we did a couple of years ago. We had a similar request, and I thought the procedure worked well and allowed us to maintain the integrity of our zoning. So if any questions for Attorney Pickrell on this? Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
So what would the benefit be of, for lack of a better way of putting it, for considering it under the ADA Act versus as a variation? And I don't know if that's for you.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so the relief is different ultimately. So although a variation typically, although we have a lot of discretion, variation is typically permanent and runs with the land. So if the applicant claims to be disabled were to leave, the variation continues and the new owner of the property can, generally speaking, continue with a wider driveway. The ADA accommodation lasts so long as it's required. So if they were to, if it's a temporary disability or if it's something that is no longer required, then it can cease.
Okay, thank you.
That is what the board has done in 2 prior times, right?
Right. If there's no other question, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and make their presentation.
I appreciate
And
you.
at this point, we're talking about the zoning aspect of it.
Yeah, the variation request, right, yeah. I appreciate you hearing me. I'll just kind of give you a little background of what happened so you understand where we're coming from. I have a small family. My wife and 2 daughters live at 162 Northgate. Member of my family has disability. Over the winter time, our driveway is very narrow. It was very slick and icy. Family member stepped out of the car onto not driveway, but onto the grass because the driveway is so narrow. Slipped and severely injured herself again due to an existing disability and injury that she sustained many years ago. So we opted to put in a path, what we thought was just a pathway next to the driveway. Our contractor did not get a permit for it as we thought that we needed. It just didn't happen. It was just a miscommunication in what happened there. So now we are into the variation request. Initially, the board, or not the board, but the village instructed us to just do an ADA request because they didn't think that we would have a variance, we wouldn't have the variance standards met, essentially. Then we were told we have to do the variance request and pay a $1,000 variance application fee, which ethically I think is just very wrong for something when we're requesting an ADA request based on a disability. So we requested to just do the ADA request, and we were told we can't do that. Went to the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. They heard the case, basically recommended against the variance. I would say it would be very much appreciated to have the variance request because when we leave, if we ever do leave that house or leave Riverside, we'll have to remove that path, which is just a pain in the neck. Essentially, it is just a paver walkway along the side of our driveway, which is providing some relief to be able to access our home without fear of injuring the member of the family, essentially. So my ask would be consider both options. It would be a severe injustice, I think, to not have to, or to have to remove that path and go back to a situation that could potentially injure my family member. And I would also really appreciate a waiver of the application fee for either instance, if the variance is approved or if the ADA accommodation is approved, or even if they're not approved in general. $1,000, I think, is a barrier to entry for people to ask for a request, particularly when it's related to a disability. But happy to answer any questions or elaborate on anything else that you might have.
Any questions for the applicant
On the zoning matter?
on the zoning matter?
I do.
Go
So
ahead.
my understanding is that staff, your landscaper did engage staff ahead of starting the project.
Yeah, I believe so.
And I believe we asked for more information. And then I also, correct me if I'm wrong, but staff did come by and see that the brick work had been initiated.
I don't know what you're asking. Are you asking if they
Had the
broke down?
brickwork been initiated without requesting a permit?
Yes, yes.
And then were you asked to remove the brick and get a permit?
We weren't asked to remove it. We were just asked to apply for a permit.
And then did you apply for the permit
Yes, and that was denied.
before? So then after that, your landscaper went forward with the project, right, with the bricks? And
I
finished the
don't think
project?
that timeline's not accurate. If I may, it was, we hired a contractor. We asked him, we originally wanted a walkway on either side of the driveway. He came back and said, we can't do the walkway on one side of the driveway. Okay. Basically, we made the assumption that he got the path for the other side of the driveway, and it was started, and he did not have a permit for that. So someone from the village came around, looked at it and said, hey, you put this in without our permission, essentially, what's going on? I just assumed that our contractor had the permit for it, which he did not, and then now we're into this process essentially.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify whether there was engagement ahead of the project about not moving forward with the project.
Yeah, after hearing from the village, I'm pretty sure that we were just told, or the contractor was told that you do not have permission to do that. That wasn't communicated to us, and they said, hey, we can come and do this. Do you want to do this? I said, yes, and I didn't know that he hadn't received the permit for it.
Any other questions on the zoning aspect? Any public comment? Any comment from the public on this matter?
I'd like to
Please come to the microphone.
just want to agree with this gentleman here that the barrier to entry for an ADA accommodation application, it just doesn't sit with me ethically. I know Planning Commissioner John Matthews also spoke that this should be, he recommended that, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I thought he recommended that the trustees take a look at that as well. He made mention of that during the Planning Commission. And I do feel strongly that we do need to make consideration for people with disabilities. They need strong accommodations.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
I have some questions for Planner Siren, if
Sure.
that's okay. Hi, I just procedural stuff. So, according to the resident, they had to, they were just going to file the ADA request, and then they were told that they had to file the variation?
Sure.
Okay, is that policy then, that you have to do that?
That was based on my recommendation.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, so
no,
it's
no.
based, okay,
Yeah, I sort of, when this was unfolding and I became aware of it, I directed Director Siren to also require the variation because
okay,
under Illinois law, even if you are disabled, you're required to
Okay.
Follow the local zoning standards, and you're supposed to, it requires that you follow both paths.
Okay.
Requesting relief.
perfect. Just wanted to clarify that. And then the resident also mentioned that were they to move or sell their property, they would have to remove the brickwork before they sold the property. Is that correct?
That will be associated with the ADA request.
Okay, so if it was the ADA request, if they sell their property, they would have to remove that before they leave.
That could be a condition of the ADA request. I believe the board can
Okay,
require
but
that.
not for the variation.
The variation runs with the land.
Okay,
So regardless
perfect.
of who's living there.
Okay, cool. Just want to understand that.
Any discussion, continued discussion from the board?
Well, I think PZC had a really good conversation about it, and they really went through the 7 standards that are always applicable to a variation, and I agree with their recommendation.
Any other comments, discussion? If not, would someone like to make a motion? This is just on the zoning variation. We'll consider the request for a fee waiver separately.
I think we're just doing a discussion right now, so we're not making a
We don't
motion.
have an ordinance.
We don't have an ordinance
Okay.
to approve. So, yeah, right now it's just, let me just double check, make sure I'm right. Right, this is just a discussion item.
So would the motion then be to direct staff to prepare an ordinance approving or denying?
Yeah, so it would be, if that's the consensus of the board, we can direct staff.
So yes, I guess I'd be looking then for a motion to either direct staff to prepare an ordinance approving the variation or an ordinance denying the variation.
You don't need a motion, you could just say, if that's what the inclination of the board is, I will go ahead and prepare
Okay.
them.
So I guess we'll just go around the dais and ask for consensus. Trustee Mateo, you spoke up. Would you like to start on
Again, based on the standards, they are not met, several of them, and I would accept PZC's recommendation.
I also would accept the PCC's recommendation on the variation.
Same here without ADA.
Yeah, I would agree.
Same.
Thank you. So we'll have an ordinance at the next agenda. That would be an ordinance denying the variation. Is that?
Yeah, I think we can just, if it needs to be an ordinance, I don't know if you're trying to, we will prepare the appropriate action to effectuate this.
Yes. Obviously, if the ADA accommodation were to get approved, I would expect the applicant would withdraw the variation anyway, so.
Right.
And then we would not have to consider it any further.
Right.
Okay, so the applicant has also requested a fee waiver. Any discussion or questions on the request for a fee waiver?
When other properties went through this process, did we waive the fee for them?
No.
I'm not aware of ever having waived fees for zoning variations. And I should just, for general educational purposes, the fee covers some of our hard costs in processing a variation. Anytime there's a variation, we have to publish notice in the newspaper. We send notice to adjacent property owners, so there's direct hard costs to the village to process a variation. Not to mention the softer costs of staff's time and resources that are used to process the variation. The fee doesn't come close to covering that cost, but it helps to defray the cost so that the other taxpayers in the village aren't covering that cost. So I guess, Bob, would it be appropriate to ask for a motion to approve or deny the request for a fee waiver? Sure, I'm sorry. I should have gone to you, yes.
My whole thing around the fee is if I wanted to do a regular variation, I'm happy to pay the $1,000 fee. That wasn't the original intent. And I don't believe there is a fee to do the ADA request, which is the original direction we were given and what we had requested to do. Doing the variation at Attorney Pickerel's advice, just honestly, it seems like a $1,000 money grab for no reason. It was not our intent to do a variation, we strongly opposed doing a variation because we knew it didn't meet the standards, and we had expressed that to the village previous to the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting, saying we know this isn't going to be approved. It clearly doesn't meet the standard of the property being a hardship. So that's the intent around not wanting to pay the $1,000, is because we knew going in we weren't going to have that recommendation, and that we were going to have to go to the ADA recommendation anyway. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
So 2 things. One, Attorney Pickerel's advice was for your benefit so that this decision would be legally enforceable.
Right.
2, if a money grab is us spending thousands of dollars of staff time over and above the $1,000 that we pay or so for publication notices, I don't think that's fair to say that's a money grab when we're losing money on a zoning variation. We're just trying, that fee is just to try to defray the cost for other taxpayers in this village.
Just a question of clarification. Is the resident being charged $1,000 per each request that he's making tonight? Just one?
Just for the zoning variation, just one, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, the procedure, if you were so inclined to waive it, someone can make a motion. If you are not inclined to waive the fee, no motion needs to be made, and we can just move on to the next item.
Very good. So I guess then the question would be, are there any other?
I just have a question. So you said that legally they had to apply.
Yes.
Legally, they had to apply for the variation.
Yes.
As well as the ADA. They couldn't just apply for the ADA.
Correct. And that makes there's a lot of bases for that. We can, I can explain that.
Sure.
Basically, when you make when there's a zoning request, there is a potential for, neighbors have rights related to this, and so the applicant has rights. And what you need to do is ensure that both the applicant and the neighbors have an opportunity to come here and discuss the relative pluses or minuses of this, and so that we can make an informed and rational decision. And if we fall short of that, we can deny potentially any number of those groups' due process rights. And by
Okay.
requiring the process, we ensure that everyone's due process rights are protected, and the final outcome, whatever the decision is on solid legal footing.
Okay. Okay, and I believe we already asked in the past when we've considered this, we have not waived the variation.
Correct. I'm saying yes from staff. We have not.
To me, these permit fees, they don't go into the general fund. They are funding Community Development Department. I think it would be bad precedent to start waiving those fees.
Is it correct that no permit fees have been collected regarding this work? So the work was done with 0 permit, correct?
I believe-
And 0 payment?
Yes, that is the
Okay,
case.
just clarifying, thank you.
Do we know what the permit fee would have been for something like this?
Well, when you do work without a permit within the village, it actually doubles. I don't know what the estimate of the cost of the work that was done, so it's difficult to calculate at the moment. Do you have it?
I can get back to you and
Okay.
see the full property.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, even if the ADA accommodation gets approved, they'll still have to apply for a permit, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So that'll still need to be done.
The actual building of it. correct.
Actual, right.
Okay, so even if we approve the ADA request, they'll still have to apply for the permit, pay the permit fee per the scope of the work, and then also pay the $1,000 variation fee.
Yeah,
That was paid already?
yeah.
Okay,
The ADA request grants them the right to locate the walkway there. The actual construction of it is a separate, it
Sure.
requires a building permit.
sure.
Also note in terms of costs, building something without a permit is a
Right.
violation of village code, which could potentially trigger a $750 a day fine, which we have not sought.
Right. I mean, I just have to say, I personally am not comfortable charging the variation fee for when it comes to ADA requests. I think in that particular instance, when it comes to an ADA request specifically, I'm not as comfortable charging the fee. It's a lot of money.
So,
And I get that we're spending a lot of money. I'm not trying to say that we're not, but it's a lot of money.
I can understand that. I mean, basically what you're saying is the other taxpayers in the village should cover that cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's fair. We already had public comment. Any other comments or questions on the fee waiver request? If not, I'm sorry.
I can just answer that permit fee question. Based on the permit fee, based on the value of construction and the doubling of the permit fee and review costs, it would be approximately $275 to $350 for total.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the fee waiver?
I would.
The motion is to waive the variation fee for this particular zoning application at 162 Northgate Road. Is there a second to that motion?
Motion dies for lack of second.
I'll give everybody a chance. I don't see any, but yes, if there's no second, then the motion dies for lack of a second. So fee waiver is not approved. Now we go to the second half of this same issue, and that's the consideration of a request for an accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act at 162 Northgate Road to allow 12-foot, 8-inch wide driveways. Planner Siren going to present this, or Attorney Pickerel?
I'm happy to just say, I mean, this is essentially, it's a simplified version of what you've been asked before, whereas a variation has 7 standards. This really is just one. The Americans with Disability Act requires that we relax otherwise applicable zoning standards to reasonably accommodate the disabilities of residents in the community so that they may access their homes and use their homes to a roughly equal extent that other non-disabled people able to do. So the request here is to widen the driveway, and Mr. Megby's wife claims that she is disabled and that allowing to have the interior widening of the driveway expanded by 2 feet allows her to walk on a stable surface and enter her home. So if the village board deems that to be reasonable, then it would be appropriate to grant the request.
And this would also come with the caveat that when they move out of the property, that be removed.
Correct.
Okay.
That'd be something up to the board to decide the terms of the ADA accommodation.
That's correct. Right. Yeah, and
And that
that's
could
the
be
other
a
thing we
term.
can, obviously disabilities are, some are temporary, some are permanent. Some, there could be periodic check-ins on this, but, typically you grant it for the length of the disability or when the disabled person no longer lives there.
Okay.
Mr. Bigby, would you like anything to add to this? Please come to the, thank you.
I don't think there's much to add. I assume you all have seen the materials that we've sent in regarding the disability and hopefully the photos of what we've added. I don't think it detracts anyway from our community. It's just a simple path of pavers that lead up to the home. Again, our driveway was approximately 9 feet wide before, and the ADA guideline is about a 3-foot wide path that can provide a stable walkway that can help prevent injuries and further aggravation of the disability. So, that's all.
Thank you. Any public comment on this, any additional public comment?
I just want to speak again about the fee, $1,000. I'm wondering if the trustees could look at it in the future, if applicants come in for a variation with intent to file for an ADA accommodation, that it be considered that the fee may be waived if the ADA accommodation is approved. Just, I understand the costs involved and whatnot, but maybe consider there probably are few ADA accommodation applications to begin with, so that $1,000 probably, I don't know what percentage of all the fees that it would cover or doesn't cover, but are we, I just feel ethically we should, as a community, cover those small fees for in the case of ADA accommodations being approved. So
Thank you. Questions for the applicant or the village attorney from the village board? Trustee Marshanska.
Yes. I have the materials, but it is unclear to me when the onset of disability took place.
Approximately 2013, 2014.
Okay. Is there any formal record of disability, for example, with the Illinois Secretary of State for drivers, hang tag or special plates?
Yeah, we don't feel the need for that. Quite candidly, parking lots are already a stable surface, and we just have to select a parking spot that is wide enough and safe enough to step out on. It's not that my wife needs to be close to a door to get into a store or something. It just has to be a level surface, so we haven't felt the need to have one of those.
Okay. Has there been any formal assessment of whether this is a temporary or a permanent disability?
Yes, in the materials I sent in through the doctor, they classify it as a chronic issue, and the definition of chronic means long-lasting and not changing. That should be in the comment from the doctor.
I did not see that reference to chronic condition, but I could be mistaken.
And I just want to say, I'd prefer not to discuss the disability in a public setting, just due to privacy concerns, like more specific questions about it. We answered many questions that the village asked. That one in particular was in the questions. But happy to answer like other things about the property and things like that, but for privacy concerns, I don't want to kind of talk about the disability openly.
Wasn't talking about the disability, just about the record of disability.
Yeah, got it.
So that was from 2013, and there's no record beyond what is submitted in the chiropractor's letter.
What kind of record would you like?
I just didn't know if there was any federal or state or, you know.
No. We, my wife has been treated for it for over 5 years now, and it's said that she will likely have to be treated ongoing for as long as we can foresee.
Other questions?
I mean, I wish it was a little clearer what the disability is, you know.
Did you read the materials that were sent
I
in?
did, actually, and I saw the request from your wife to the doctor of what to say in the letter, which he did with, except for he did not say that the injury or the disability would qualify for ADA accommodation.
I don't know if that's his role to do that, but it's a lower back and abdominal injury that she sustained that she's going to need to be treated for basically for the rest of her life, essentially.
With an onset in 2013.
Yep.
Okay, so when did you buy this property?
December 2018. We moved in January. The impetus for adding this essentially was a fall over this past winter, which is why we wanted to put the pathway in post that.
Other questions?
I have a question. Has a condition gotten worse in that time period? Between 2013 and
after the
2018 or
fall.
2018 to now?
Yeah, the fall severely aggravated the injury, which is why we felt we needed to add the pathway in now, essentially.
Okay.
So are we being asked to approve this under the ADA, or is it just discussion today?
It's just a discussion today, but with a consensus, we're either gonna, if the board is inclined to approve it, I'll draft a resolution.
Okay, so it's the same thing as before, where we give you direction.
So quite another question for the petition. If we do approve this with the caveat that you must return it to the pre-waiver status, once you sell the property or whatever, or sooner, if your wife does, have a miracle, I would hope she does. How do you feel about that?
That's fine. I have no issue with bringing it back to the original state. It's really just filling it in with dirt and putting grass seed down. Or, I don't know how that works exactly, or giving the buyer a credit to do it on their own or something along those lines. It's very fine with me.
Okay. Well, at the time of transfer title, I mean.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I do hope she gets a miracle and she does get better. I think we all would. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments or discussion at this time?
I'd be inclined to accept the accommodation on the condition that it be removed upon transfer. I think the periodic check-ins might be found to be too intrusive, and I wouldn't advocate for that.
It would also take a lot of staff time to do that as well, and resources are limited. They right to medical privacy.
I would agree.
I don't think the standard's been met for temporary versus permanent in the chiropractor's letter.
I agree. It's, we could approve the ADA accommodation, and then the property would need to be restored.
So Attorney Pickrell.
Counting heads, I counted 4 positive, and that's enough to pass. So I will draft the appropriate resolution. Did I get that right? 1,
Did you?
2, 3, 4.
Did you opine, Alex?
Yeah, I agreed with you.
Did I get that right? All in favor? Favor, okay, yeah. My counting is right. Okay. I'll prepare the appropriate resolution.
And that will come back to us at our next board meeting, which is August 15th. And based on the discussion, that would include a sunset clause when the disability goes away or the property changes ownership, or for whatever reason, the person with the disability no longer resides there. And I guess that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah,
anything
that's
else?
really it.
I have a question. How is that enforced? We don't really know.
Well,
They're gonna
we,
put their-
this is what we did with the other ADA accommodation, and so basically, it gets recorded. There'll be a resolution, we'll approve it. That document gets recorded against the property, so that if they're selling the property, during closing, that would be disclosed prior to a new owner purchasing the property. So they would know, the new owner would know that has to be removed, be up to the buyer and seller to decide who's paying for that, like in any real estate transaction. Now, if they continue to own the home and they just happen to not live there, that would be harder to enforce. We wouldn't necessarily know that.
Correct.
But that's an unlikely scenario, so.
I'll just add one item. So not only do we record it at the county level, but when there's a transfer of property, we do a zoning compliance. And so there are certain things that are noted, and this would be one of the items. And so and for some rare occasion, it doesn't come up on a title search. We have kind of the second fallback, which is the zoning compliance.
Very good. No further discussion. That'll come back to us on August 15th as a resolution approving the ADA accommodation. If you'd like to have a preview of that before the meeting, I'm sure staff and Attorney Pickerel can provide that, a draft to you before, so you know before we vote exactly what you're agreeing to. So, thank you. We will move back to pending business, back to the regular agenda. Under pending business, we did have a presentation scheduled by Williams Architects regarding our public safety space needs and community spaces, but due to illness, our architect was unable to attend, so this will be rescheduled for August 15th. 9B, application for economic development assistance update and discussion related to gateway design at 2720 South Harlem. Assistant Manager Monroe.
Good evening. So I'll have Clerk Soul, if you would. Okay, very good. So this item had been most recently discussed by the board at the March 21st meeting this year with the property owner of 2720 South Harlem through 2728 South Harlem, and also the adjacent property, other adjacent properties north of what's shown on the screen here. Dr. Normati had requested some economic assistance for essentially further development of a gateway area in cooperation with the Village of Riverside. This is all flowing from the site plan application that they had made years prior to fully develop the entire lot, right? So the lot north of what's shown on the screen is 2710 South Harlem. It was previously owned by the Village of Riverside, sold to Dr. Normati, and he developed that as an adjacent connecting parking lot. And as part of that site plan approval, the lot, connected to the shopping center was also considered for various changes. And so what the board discussed in March was the kind of improvements that were possible. I was directed by the board to work with our engineer, Christopher Burke Engineering, to come up with some design concepts for you to react to as potential redevelopment. So thinking about things like gateway signage, the bike racks that Dr. Normati had marked on his initial site plan that was approved, as well as any other kinds of attributes that could develop visual interest, like pavers or a planter or something of that nature. So we went back with Christopher Burke, and Dr. Normati also has looked at most of all the designs and said they look good. Whatever the board generally likes, he would be in favor of working collaboratively with us on installing. So if Ethan, can you switch the slide again? I'll just give you, so to orient you, this is that full site plan of approval. With the gateway area, you'll see it kind of on that far right side. It was marked in blue on the previous slide. Is kind of like a triangle pie piece at the corner of Long Common and Harlem. So it's a very small area, and you've received, I believe, 6 design options as part of your packet. No, thank you. I think that'll, right here. So it's really in this very small triangle here. And what's proposed in that small triangle, maybe switch to the next picture so we can orient. So this is that area with one of those design concepts. You have basically the enclosure of the lot, so separation between the larger parking lot area behind and a smaller parking lot right along Long Common here. We would, in most of these designs, or all of them, think it's appropriate to add curb and some green space in an area to make sure it's very clear from a pedestrian and traffic standpoint that that's no longer a drivable area as it is now. There are brick pavers that are proposed as a fill-in, essentially. There are pedestrian walkways that would be improved as part of that. Bike racks are very kind of visible behind here. There are 2 shown, and then some element of a signage. And so there's a couple of different variations. I provided a cost breakdown as well from the engineer. These funds would be captured from our Business District 1 capital kind of funds. The districts are self-sustaining in terms of the fees that they pay into. The business district are used to directly develop and redevelop the business district that they're paid to. So we've assessed and generally seen that the maximum cost is provided by the engineer. It varies anywhere from 90,000 or so to up to 200,000, depending on the variables that are of interest potentially for the board. If there is nothing that we would like to pursue in terms of a gateway area, then the lot would revert to whatever the property owner chooses to keep it as, and they can remove their site plan request and essentially keep the lot in its current condition. So that's, I could answer any questions, or we can kind of flip through it, maybe just flip through unless I have the ability to do that. Okay, so I'll just show you the different versions, explain the difference, and then the board can have any discussion you like. This is fundamentally the same setup here in option B. The difference is just simply, instead of the kind of metalwork Riverside signage post, you have the kind of branded sign that has been prior approved, and you see examples of that across First Avenue along Ridgewood and Gulf over on the west part of town. This one is a little bit different. It has, again, the stone column with the signage here, metalwork, and a smaller planter, and a tree planted in the ground with a grate. All of these plans show the bike racks as proposed by Dr. N. The cost decreases a little bit, but still it's an expensive project in terms of the planter materials. Option D is, again, similar, but we've, instead of the stone column, inserted a metal post with some element. It wouldn't have to have a gas lamp top here, but it certainly just kind of brings some some appeal or Riverside quality, right? Again, with a tree and a grate on the pavers. I have two more. This similar option, but with that branded sign that specifically says Riverside and our established date. And then finally, a really bare bones area without the planter material there, but still incorporates some greenery, the bike plan, the bike racks here, and a kind of a Riverside branded sign. So it's just up for discussion. I'm happy to answer any questions of the board, but essentially the action is, what direction would you like to go? Is there a particular design that you'd like staff to further consider? And then we would identify what type of agreement is appropriate for coordination with Dr. N as far as the use of this area of property for, essentially public improvements.
Could we see letter E for a second, please?
There.
Do we know how high the bottom of that sign is from the sidewalk?
I'm sorry, what?
Do we know how the distance between the sidewalk and the bottom of that sign?
That was inserted just for visual purposes. We would make sure that the height difference between the base of that sign and a pedestrian wouldn't be in conflict.
Yeah, we would most likely have to keep it out of the right-of-way.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we're dealing with IDOT, so that may inaccurately show it over the sidewalk. But we certainly would not want to do that.
Right. The scale is likely not accurate in this. This was, to be honest, this was my insertion of that little gateway sign. The rest were done by the engineer. So, sorry.
And one of the things, if the board decided to go in this direction, it may not necessarily be something with the gas lamp look to it. It may be something similar to what we've done over on Ridgewood, where it has enough height, because you have to contemplate the truck traffic and things of that sort. And so maybe mimicking that same look, it would just have a different sign on it.
I like the lamp post better than the other posts that we had made of the brickwork, because that is more of our signature landmark symbol.
Trustee Marshazga.
I actually, there's one image in our packet that I think is really important to look at, and that's, looking at all of the surrounding areas. It's, we've got the library on the other opposite side of the street. We have a tall, massive public storage building, and then we have a gas station on these opposite corners. And I think there's a lot of visual competition happening there right now. And I think whatever we do, I realize there's a limited window of opportunity to act with respect to this site, to, have an impact, to change something, to maybe move forward to the future. But I do think we have to be careful that what we choose is something that will hold its own by itself for now, when we can't do anything, on the opposite side. So my concern with the street lamp type options is that they are not substantial enough visually. My concern with using the branded gateway signs is that there are so many other signs around that it looks like yet another sign that isn't, going to add to the appeal and make you want to come into Riverside. Those are my first impressions. Of the options that are presented, I believe I like anything that adds more green space. So if you were to do option A, I'd look at that one. I feel that the column of the water tower mimicking what is at the entry of Forest and First, I'm not sure what the scale is here, how big that is going to be in relation to the buildings and the corners and the context. But I like it because it seems substantial. It seems to hint that what is inside Riverside is also substantial. So that is the general impression I like. I like the greenery. I like the inclusion of a tree. I was not sure from the cost estimates whether the tree in a grate is different from the tree in the planter and how that is costed out in things, but I think we should definitely have a tree. I think we definitely need green space. I don't know if it would reduce cost at all if instead of having that red brick and plus a planter there, if it were all grass and then, you know, a tree in a grate with the tower. I don't know if that's an option. But that brings more green into the area. I'm not sure if it protects the grassy areas enough. But then you'd have the height of the natural tree with the green of the sod and then the substantial column. So that's maybe a cost option that we could consider.
I think one reason for the raised planter is maintenance. If it's just grass there, you probably don't need the raised planter. But if you want any flowers or color, you really need to raise it up. Otherwise, it's just going to struggle with the salt and the environment.
Could it have like a, you know, a curbed area like raised around it, or is that a trip hazard or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It'd be a good question for our landscape architect in terms of how tall does that have to be? How much does it need to be raised in order to keep the plants healthy?
I have a question for Trustee Aberdeen. Were you suggesting that they look similar to the ones we have in our central business district because of the color scheme and?
The planters?
Yeah.
I think that was probably the intent of
Yes.
these mock-ups,
Yeah.
is that we would be consistent with those. So it's not that I'm adverse to them, it's just that I was curious about if that would make a difference in cost. You know, because I feel strongly about having a tree and that definitely that green, you know, sod area there that prevents it from being a driveway. I mean, the option, was it B that had the all concrete there, just is not enough of an improvement in my opinion. It's not Riverside enough.
I have another question. The brickwork around the raised planter, is that going to have to be changed out as that tree grows wider and wider?
The question, I think, is that I think I'd like staff to ask someone is,
Sure.
is tree going to do better in a grate at grade level, or is it going to do better in the raised planter?
Not at grade. There's too much salt. The contractors put too much salt in that area. If it's at grade level in the grade, the tree probably won't survive.
Okay.
So the tree, too, would be better in the planter box, raised up.
We'd have to try to find a species that won't grow too big to help grow that planter.
Okay.
It's plus like in the central
It's worth
business.
a lot, thank you. It's good to know.
In the central business district, it also, like, it will do the same thing here. It'll provides a place to sit too.
Yeah.
People can
Yes.
sit on a raised.
Yeah. So I'm generally liking A.
Others? Trustees?
I agree with trustee Marshazga that we would have to really make sure that the scale is appropriate for that corner, which is already very busy with, you know, the lights are right next to it. It's just, you know, and there's like the gas station right across the street, which isn't super attractive. I wonder if that would take away from the work that we're doing on one side. As I've mentioned, Doug, I don't know that, did Dr. Norwadi agree to the configuration of the parking lot being blocked?
So I can let Assistant Village Manager Monroe speak to that.
So if the desire to put something, enhanced in this area is preferable for this purpose, the circulation of the parking lot with the removal of the fence section that the board approved as a major site plan amendment was thinking and keeping this in mind, right? So the ability to circulate traffic through that lot was improved by the removal of the fence, anticipating that this closure of that street through street would be removed. So our position from a staff perspective is that it maintains the ability for people to find parking in a variety of areas with the enhanced signage that we've talked about in terms of limiting any kind of neighborhood traffic through the area from the alley should continue to keep this a usable lot. Dr. N has conveyed that there are minor changes in pending the board's direction on this. There are still minor changes to the lot that need to happen, so he needs to restripe parts of the lot. One of them, the changes being that they need to incorporate in an additional ADA accessible parking space. And fundamentally, there have been changes proposed by the Planning and Zoning Commission for parts of the lot that Dr. N is not in favor of. There wouldn't be a need to make changes to the lot, even if he does still allow this kind of closure of this little gateway area. He's able to make the basic changes to the lot with restriping and board's approval without a major amendment.
So in speaking with regards to this setup, Ethan, if you don't mind going back to the original map that shows, thank you.
Yeah.
How it currently stands with the configuration of that particular lot. People are utilizing, if there's no parking spaces in the main lot, to get over to Long Common, they're traversing essentially our sidewalk. And so that's not safe or good, and so this type of configuration would enhance the safety too. People can certainly, if they need to get around, they can certainly make a right onto Harlem and then turn right onto Long Common to access those parking spots. If those aren't available, they can go down the alley to access the other parking lot. And so it'll be an improvement to the circulation, in my opinion, for that site, enhance safety for pedestrians too.
So to answer your question though,
Yeah.
Dr. Normati is supportive of us doing this. He, separate on this agenda is an item to consider his amendments to his site plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask that be tabled until this is settled. He may want to discuss some minor details of that site plan, of this site plan, but we can deal with that separately, but it would be wise to figure out what we're doing, then he can react to that and know how that affects him, but he is supportive of it, for sure.
Okay.
I just must insist on sharing my experience since I go to the mall quite often. I use the mall, and I come down Long Common. And so unless I'm going to use the alleyway, which really isn't supposed to be a throughway, is it? It will become a throughway.
Public right-of-way.
But if I was to turn left, if I'm able to turn left, that means I have a green light, and that means the cars at that light are stopped. So then I'm trying to make another left into the lot. It's really going to be difficult. So I guess I would have to go back down and turn left at Berkeley
You can't make a left turn.
or
there,
Bird?
can you? You
We
can't
can
make a left
access
turn.
the property through the alley or from Harlem. Harlem would be difficult making a left turn, but the alley would be quick and easy. And
You
we are-
you can't make a left turn onto Berkeley from Harlem, right?
No.
Correct.
There's
We don't
raised.
permit that.
But you can access those two southern driveways.
Yes.
It's not ideal. It can be difficult, but also we're putting $200,000 into improvements in that alley this year. So that alley will be improved to where it can handle a minimal amount of traffic that would be needed to get through that and circulate through that parking lot.
Are the costs that were listed with this, those are straight costs to the village, not, those won't be split with Dr. N, right?
Correct. Our
Those are
agreement
just
with
our
him.
costs, yeah.
Right. Our agreement with him when he purchased 2710 outlined that we would be allowed an easement, whether on this property or at 2710 South Harlem, to allow for village gateway signage. This corner is a better solution than in the middle of the block where there will be less visibility, but we would have to pay 100% of the cost.
Okay.
But
Just
those
making sure.
funds are coming from the business
Right,
district sales
right.
tax generated from this
From this
property.
bill, yeah.
Right. Should we go back to the concepts and get some more input on that? So far, I think what I'm hearing is trustees like option A. The tree in the planter box seems to be preferable in terms of the health of the tree as well as the other landscaping. The column, we had two options, one with this smaller Riverside sign like we see at Forest and First Avenue. The other was a panel that had more information on it.
Which I prefer, just for the record.
You prefer the panel with more information?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Do any trustees prefer the options without the column that had the street light or the post?
I don't like the
Can I say something before we answer that? I always ask, what's the goal? What's the target? Who's the audience? So the goal is to beautify that space and brand it in some way. Who's the audience? Is it somebody in the lot? Is it somebody parked at the light? Is it somebody on foot? Is it somebody in a car? If it's people in cars, none of those signs are going to be big enough, in my opinion, because it is very visually busy there. I told President Pollock that I kind of favored having two signs that say, "Welcome to Riverside," one facing Long Common, one facing Harlem, with lots of vegetation around it and grasses and whatnot, with big enough letters. I mean, compare Shining Smiles to Riverside. I think if we're going to be spending a lot of money, people better be able to see it and know what it is. So that's my thinking.
I agree, it needs to stand out against the backdrop of the intersection. There's a lot going on.
So you like the panel better? Or is that still not
I don't
enough?
really care for the water tower, so can't say.
I mean, I don't want to sound critical, but that water tower looks more like Western Springs water tower, not ours.
Well, it would look like, I mean, these are concepts, so whatever we do is going to be identical materials and appearance to the other items like that in the village. But I mean, the other factor with the column is it's $75,000. Now, granted, over time, we'll be able to pay that with the business district sales tax, but that's a lot for the column. But again, we would just, it'll get paid through the sales tax, business district sales tax.
I just don't see how we could put any signage there, any signage at all that would compete with the signage that's around it. I mean, if we were to try and put signage there or welcome there or something like that to try and compete with what's up there, it would have to be huge, and yeah, I don't know. The only other thing I could think of is if you put Welcome to Riverside along the raised, you know, the vertical part of, like if you put like a giant Riverside along the vertical part of the garden, that's the only place where I see enough actual space to.
I didn't mean literally to compete with Shining Smiles.
No, I didn't mean, I know you don't mean it has to be like bigger than Shining Smile, but I'm just saying if you want it to be substantial enough, I still don't think it would make it bigger than Shining Smiles, but at least that light background with something dark over it might stand out more. I don't think anything that we hang off anything is really gonna be.
I don't mean to interrupt, but maybe just for context, I had a conversation with the Economic Development Commission during our discussion of proposals for wayfinding signage, right? So thinking about the branding, comments were made at that time with, you know, some with significant interest. They really love the columns that are at Forest. They think of them as identifying, you know, like kind of location markers. They didn't specify that this was a particular perfect location or anything like that for this type of sign, but they did like that. The other thing to consider is that we've also made placeholders for space for a similar size type sign if the village would choose to incorporate this as part of the phase 2 engineering and construction on Quincy Street. So if there's an arts district or other kind of identifying location type of thing, we've assigned a space at least within the construction documents for something of that size. It doesn't have to be exactly this or this design or this specific thing, but it could be something that is identifiable throughout town if that's the direction you want to go, or a particular design that you really care for. So just for context of opportunities versus what you know, what our preferences are and what you want to do.
Can I just make one last comment? So what I'm kind of visualizing, and you know, this is just my idea when I'm looking at it, would be to expand the landscaping a little bit, and then we could even just do something simpler like a large sign made out of sustainable material with sort of with stakes that you put in the landscaping. So it would just be like a rectangle sign in the landscaping. I don't think that we should do a lot here. I mean, I drive by all the time, and I don't know, I would encourage you all to take some time and be in the space and look around and see if the project would do the project justice to put it there.
So I'd like to add a few things here. One is I think we need to figure out how to get more public input on this before we take any final action. Whether that's sending it through EDC, Landscape Advisory, whoever, or if it's just posting something on our website and asking people to comment. I think we would like to get more comment. Next, I want to, you know, my personal opinion of this. I liked the idea of the column initially. The cost kind of made me take a step back, and then when I saw it visually, my feeling is it's too much. It is too much of a big, tall structure in an area that little corner has a bunch of more skinny type of, you know, you don't see anything else like that. It blocks your sight lines a little bit. As far as the sign, I don't think our goal is that everybody who drives by can read the sign. I think that's an unrealistic goal. We won't want that because the sign will be too big. I think the sign is more background. It's more, hey, I'm stopped at the intersection. Oh, that's cool. It's kind of like at Forest and First. When you drive down First Avenue, you don't really notice those signs, but when you're stopped, you see them and they're really cool. But, so that's kind of my thoughts. I had actually liked, I think it was option E or F, which had the single post, yeah, one of those. And now I'm really thinking F, just keep it simple. And, you know, that's just background as part of the land. Well, I still want the planter box, of course, but maybe with the smaller sign like we have downtown and like we have at First and Forest. But anyway, that's my thoughts, and I'm just one of 9,000 who should be commenting and being aware of this. So how does the board want to proceed?
I just have one other question, comment. I don't know if this is being considered as we look into the sale of the property on the railroad tracks. Why can I not think of, I can't think of. Thank you. Burlington, but I couldn't think of on Harlem and Burlington. Are we trying to think of a similar situation where we work with them to carve out our own corner there for signage?
Right. Yeah, this all started years ago, 12 years ago, maybe 10. We adopted a comprehensive wayfinding sign plan for the village. We've implemented it in starts and fits and bits over the years, and this is the next phase. We have stuff planned for Harlem and Quincy, Harlem and Burlington, maybe other locations I don't remember, but.
The great challenge with Harlem Avenue and the feedback that I've always heard throughout my career in Riverside, and it started well beyond that, is Harlem Avenue is a gateway to Riverside, but people don't even know that it's Riverside because there's no signage, and the challenge is that we can't install signage because it's IDOT right-of-way. So the only way that we are able to accomplish that is we're fortunate that we purchased some properties, and now we are able to get these particular access easements to install these to basically beautify the districts. If I may have a suggestion or solution. What staff can do is we have these different pictures, but we can compile some other gateway signage based on things that have been described by the board. Ashley can send it out to you all, make sure that it's the items that you described, and in a way to get feedback from just the general public, we can either create kind of a survey monkey, like which ones do you like, which ones don't you like, create some raw data, and then bring some of that back, and then maybe that gives us a starting point of, do you want this to go back to EDC based on narrowing down kind of the scope of here are the top 3 that residents really appreciated and enjoyed, because then maybe they can narrow it down to an additional recommendation.
I'd like to hear from LAC too. Okay. I think they have some knowledge that would be helpful with this too.
I think if we're going to do that, I think EDC should.
I agree. Well, I meant in addition to EDC.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take advantage of those people. They fully immersed in issues related to this. You know, EDC could comment on how they think it you know, how it may affect economic development, LAC. Yeah. And then just informally, we're not specifically asking them to make any decisions. We just want some feedback, and I like the idea of the survey as well.
Okay. Do you want us to do the survey, narrow it down to like a top 3, and then bring it to the commissions before we bring it back to the board? Does that make sense? And do you want preservation to opine? Because if LAC is, okay.
Yes.
So, thank you, Bert, for doing these renderings. They're very creative. What we should keep in mind is, I believe the planters on Burlington have water provided to them?
Some of them do, not all of them.
And this currently does not, so we have to think about maintenance. We have to remember that anything flowering is going to be 3 months out of the year. The other 9 months, it's not going to look like that. So,
do you know if
keep in mind.
Cost includes water?
I do.
It's not in the budget.
Doesn't include water.
Okay.
We had some preliminary discussion about including the irrigation systems that are that are in other locations throughout town. The challenge with doing that is the really limited amount of space here, and there's, you know, the mechanisms and equipment boxes that are not shown here that might need to be incorporated if we have water that needs to be connected.
I will share with you, when I said not all of them have the irrigation, so the one that is adjacent to the train station, that does not have irrigation within it. So, and those plants are thriving in that space, so that's something that we can take a look at and learn
Plant
from.
selection, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Will the renderings that we are going to share with the commissions, are these the renderings we're going to share?
Well, what I would ask Ashley to do, and Ethan would probably assist her as well, is just pulling, based on some of the feedback, like I was looking as the board was discussing of something more vertical in the planter, to get kind of giving the visual of what you have in mind. Then finding out from residents, is this something you're interested in before we start incorporating branding and finishes and things of that sort, refine it once we have it narrowed down to those threes, get that feedback, and then bring it back to you all. But also send it out to the board before we start polling residents on this, because we want to make sure that those pictures incorporated what you were thinking.
Thank you.
Good, so we're going to put together a visual preference type survey. We'll share that with the board before we send it out. We'll give that a couple weeks for feedback, and then we'll take it to our various committees and commissions, and then come back to the board. Anything else? Any public comments on this item? We have direction?
Have direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a discussion regarding major amendment to the site plan at 2720, 2728 South Harlem Avenue. I would ask for a motion to table this to a future meeting. Do we need to designate a specific meeting?
August 15th?
It would be helpful. It's not required, but I believe, we don't have to send out
Well,
notices for
the
this.
point is, we don't want to consider this till we decide on the gateway feature.
Right.
So
Which may not
You
be
could just-
be prudent to just table it indefinitely if that's acceptable.
Motion to table.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Clerk Sol.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
That is tabled indefinitely and will come back to us once we have settled on the gateway feature. Item D, a resolution initiating the submission of a public question to increase the Village of Riverside tax extension limitation. Manager Francis.
Thank you. The village board, as previously discussed, presenting a referendum question on the upcoming November ballot to fund streets. The question as outlined, I'll read it and then explain it as well. It says, shall the extension limitation under the property tax extension limitation law for the Village of Riverside, Cook County, Illinois, be increased from the lesser of 5% or the percentage increase in the consumer price index over the prior year levy to 9.3% per year for 2024. And what does that mean? Well, as a reminder, for those that are watching, the village 10 years ago issued bonds that were approved via referendum for streets. Those bonds are coming due at the end of this year. To keep the property tax neutral, we're asking to just increase the property tax by that amount. So there wouldn't be an increase to Riverside residents. However, the language is different than what was in the previous referendum because we're looking to try to save residents approximately $500,000 every 10 years. Instead of doing a referendum every 10 years, specifically asking to issue bonds for payment of resurfacing streets, we are instead looking at just extending the property tax. And so therefore, that those monies would be utilized in perpetuity for streets for Riverside residents. At the August 15th board meeting, so if this item is approved, then we will have an ordinance amending the village code regarding the village's street and bridge tax. This will incorporate that language as it relates to, if successful, these funds would be utilized for streets in perpetuity, and it provides that additional language. Also in the agenda history sheet, it outlines the deadlines for the respective items for this particular referendum. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have. I will note in the agenda history sheet that was, this item was included previously, but the street debt, so the property impact on a $500,000 valued home in Riverside, they pay approximately $116 specifically related to the street debt. That would not change in 2025 if this referendum was approved.
Any questions, comments from the board? I will note again that we have talked about this on many occasions, so the board is well aware of this issue. If there's no discussion, is there any public comment on this agenda item? If not, would someone like to make a motion to approve the, what are we approving here?
The resolution initiating this.
Resolution, yes, thank you.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by trustee Gallego, second by trustee Koss. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Clerk Sol.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion's approved. New business, skipping ahead to C, we already did A and B. An ordinance authorizing issuance of a Class E liquor license, Katrina Tequila Bar Incorporated. Clerk Sol.
The village received a liquor license application from Katrina Tequila Bar, who will soon be located at 7 Long Common Road. As part of this process, the village board must approve to increase the number of licenses so that a new business could obtain a liquor license.
Thank you. Questions from trustees?
I have a question. Wasn't the president always the liquor license commissioner and could do that?
I think I still am technically,
I
right?
think you are,
Yes.
yeah.
But-
Liquor control
We still have
commissioner.
to vote?
But you still have to approve.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, you control the number of licenses, he administers
Right.
the licenses.
Okay, and their one location doesn't just carry over to their other location?
No.
They'll have 2 locations.
Okay. All right, I'll make the motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Motion by trustee Gallego, second by trustee Evans. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Motion's approved, and thank you to Katrina Tequila Bar. We're excited about your new location in
Very
Riverside.
nice.
Thank you for doing business in Riverside, and please frequent their
Margarita, please.
existing and new establishment. D, an ordinance amending Title IV of the Village Code of the Village of Riverside relating to any energy conservation codes. Assistant Manager Monroe.
Thank you. This is a request to adopt the 2021 Illinois Energy Conservation Code. Every couple of years, the International Code Council puts out new requirements for buildings, and in this case, the state of Illinois has adopted, as of January 1st, adopted the ILECC for that 2021 code. We've basically amended it to be specific to requirements for Illinois municipalities that adhere to other building codes. This is all part of their Energy Efficient Building Act, and so we would just be adopting that form of our code. As I say in the agenda sheet, it doesn't impact our ability to amend this later down the road, to adopt other codes, as we're still planning to within the next year. But it's just a move to a more energy efficient building code as we are able. So this is a request to do that.
Thank you. Any questions from the trustees? Any public comment on this item? If seeing none, is there a motion to approve an ordinance amending Title IV of the Village Code?
I'll make that motion.
Oh.
I'll second it.
It's a good move.
Motion by trustee Marshowska, second by trustee Mateo. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, clerk's roll.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Marshowska?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
Motion is approved. E, an ordinance amending Title IX of the Village Code of the Village of Riverside, Illinois, relative to parking prohibitions in certain places. Manager Francis.
Thank you. This is really a housekeeping item, this ordinance. As Director Tabb, Director Buckley, and myself were surveying different areas, making improvements through the summer by the schools and various crosswalks and things of that sort. One thing that was identified actually late in the school year in May was some of the parking prohibitions. More specifically, the 8 o'clock time became a challenge because many times the drop-offs are already starting. And so by saying that cars need to be no longer on the street at 8 o'clock actually became impactful to traffic flow. And so it was the suggestion and recommendation of staff that we change that to 7:30. We believe that that'll enhance the flow of traffic of kiddos being dropped off at the various schools noted. And that also having the parking prohibition to 4 o'clock wasn't necessary. And so changing that to 3:30. And so that is outlined within the ordinance. President Pollack asked that I reach out to District 96 Superintendent to make sure that they didn't have any issues or concerns about that. They did not. We've worked very closely with D96 over the years, especially as it relates to traffic flow by their schools. We have officers over there regularly trying to help minimize and mitigate any issues and make sure traffic is flowing freely.
Thank you. Any questions from trustees? Anyone from the public commenting on this matter? If seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
That's to approve amendment to Title IX.
I'll second.
Motion by trustee Gallego, second by trustee Koss. Clerk Sol.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Marshowska?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
Motion's approved. Trustee reports. We have a cross-community climate collaborative update. Assistant Manager Monroe, or who's handling that?
I'm happy to, and Trustee Marshallska can add anything she likes. Essentially, we did our kickoff on July 11th with our consultant, Nutter Consulting, that is going to work with us on development of our first climate action and resilience plan. So they are doing a lot of research right now and compiling a lot of and understanding the work that we've already done, the extensive amount of work that's already been done over the past year with help from the community. So it's really exciting, and they're just getting started, and we'll check in with them in a couple of weeks. So other things, just to note, there was a Tai Chi and nature event on June 28th in Guthrie Park. It was well attended, and people seem interested in doing more of that. So we're working with Parks and Recreation to make that a regular thing. Also of note, it's just kind of coming up as a new event. I'll note that there's a nature immersion event going to take place on August 3rd. It is sort of being termed nature bathing. It's a term that's a little bit foreign to some people, but it's really about immersion and understanding and just being and enjoying nature. So they're guiding people through that. It does require registration. Parks and Recreation has the registration. It is free, but we welcome the community to do that. And so people connected with C4 are planning that. And then I will hand it off if there's any notes about the 4th of July parade.
Oh, 4th of July was a lot of fun, actually. Our C4 team and marched with the village board with an EV float that was, themed along the idea of composting and the 3 ways that our village residents can compost. We're very lucky that, we have not only do it yourself as an option, but we have Flood Brothers that picks up our yard waste, and it's possible to put your food scraps in there. We have, beyond their seasonal service, we also have Waste Not Compost, which does a year-round sealed clean container swap out program at curbside. And so our float featured bucket drummers drumming on the Waste Not Compost buckets in an all-electric EV pulled by Waste Not that was carrying a giant landfill monster. And our, lovely signage said, please do not feed the landfill. So anything that, if it's like a food scrap, if it's grown at one point in time, it is possible to compost it. So it was a really fun way to engage with the community and drum up interest in composting. I know, I couldn't resist. And we're very grateful for Waste Not support and also for Flood Brothers support, because they actually let us walk the walk by donating candy in compostable packaging. So we were not contributing to any landfill litter in connection with doing that, and it was just, all around a lot of fun. So thank you to everyone who helped. The next C4 meeting is going to be Thursday of next week at the library at 6:30. So if anybody's interested in getting involved, there are many, many opportunities. So please come join us.
Thank you. Thank you both. Any other trustee reports? Trustee Evans.
The Riverside Friends of the Library is completing development of the new Riverside Appley game. Every square around the game board has been reserved for sponsorship, but there are some spaces on the interior of the board that are available. And if anyone is interested in sponsoring those, it's not too late. Please call Janice Foley at Riverside Public Library. Time is running out.
We also have one more update for the sesquicentennial.
Yes, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, so it had been basically discussed before, and I believe there was a landmark article referencing this, that we are, as a village, are going to be swapping out our old street signs, retiring them and getting new street signs in. So as part of, and actually, the basis for some of the sesquicentennial activities that we're going to be doing next year as a fundraiser, we will be auctioning off the classic brown and white street signs as part of this process. So the new signs are going to start to be installed within the next couple of weeks, and it'll be a long process. The major auction is not going to be taking place until 2025, but there will be a few signs that we will have a special live auction for at this year's holiday stroll, which will be, kind of exciting to just kick off the beginning of our 2025 activities. So
Thank you.
That's all I got.
All right. Any other trustee reports? We do not have need for an executive session this evening, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by trustee Cost, second by trustee Gallegos. Clerk Soul, please call the roll.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Cost?
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.